Hey everyone, I hope you're well. I hope you've had a good week. Welcome back to our Lenten series, Walk with God. So far, we've touched on what is Lent. We have talked about faith, what it is, what it isn't, how we feel it. And today, we're going to talk about God, but particularly God as a sustainer. What do you think of when you think of something sustaining? I think of food most of the time. And when we say sustain, we mean something that keeps us going. Food does exactly that, right? We get up in the morning, maybe you have some breakfast, and that food that we put into our bodies sustains us for the first part of our day until we get to lunch and then dinner. It keeps our energy levels up, keeps us from getting tired. Maybe you get hangry when you get hungry. And it gives us nutrients for our body that keeps us healthy. And God does exactly the same thing. So it's a fun way to compare the relationship that we have with God with food. It's a new way to look at it. So this week, our activity for after our song is pretzels. We are going to be making pretzels. So I wanted to give you the ingredients now before we sing and get started. You're going to need some salt. You're going to need some flour. It can be, this isn't flour, this is sugar. You're going to need sugar, granulated or brown sugar if you have it. You are going to need some butter. We have vegan butter in our house, but any butter will do. You are going to need flour, like I mentioned earlier. This is our flour. And water, of course, you're going to need water. And you're going to need some yeast. I have bread yeast. I think any yeast will do. There's Rapid Rise, a bunch of different other ones. This is the one kind of weird ingredient that you may not have, that you might have to get. So yeast is the ingredient that helps it kind of rise. And you also are going to need some baking soda. So enjoy the song. The lyrics are going to speak to what we're going to talk about while we bake together. We're going to be singing All in All, and it's about God as a sustainer. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side of the song.
You are my all in
Hey everyone, welcome to my kitchen, and we're gonna make some pretzels together. I'm really excited. So we're gonna show you the ingredient list one more time so you can make sure you have everything. And once you have everything gathered, let's get started. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna preheat our oven to 400 degrees. It's pretty high, but the pretzels won't be in there for very long. So you're gonna preheat your oven to 400 degrees. After you do that, and while it's heating up, you're gonna go over and get yourself a pretty decent sized bowl, and you are gonna pour 1.5 cups of warm water into the bowl. Make sure that it's warm water, not too hot, because when you add the yeast, you don't want to kill it with the hot water. So you want to make sure it's warm water. After that, you are gonna add 1 packet of active dry or instant yeast. If you don't have a packet and you're like me and you have a little container, that equates to 2 1/4 teaspoons. 1, 2, 1/4. You can give that a little mix if you want with preferably a wooden spoon or any other spoon that you have, and just let it sit until it gets a little bubbly. That means everything is working. Okay, after you've let the yeast and water sit and combine, maybe bubble up and get you a little kind of layer on the top form, that means you're good to go. And we are gonna add our salt, our sugar, and our butter. So you're gonna take a teaspoon of salt, spread that on in, and then you're gonna take a tablespoon, which is the bigger one, of sugar or brown sugar, like I said, whatever you have. And then a tablespoon of butter, and you're gonna wanna melt it really quick. So zap it in the microwave for like 10-15 seconds. It'll start to melt really fast, and you're gonna add that to your mixture. Mix that up, and you're already done with that step. Okay, now comes the fun/messy part. We are gonna mix our flour into our water, yeast, butter, sugar mixture that we have, okay? So I already measured out 3 3/4 cups of flour. And I put it into another thing. It's just easier to dump in, but you can do it 1 cup at a time. And that's actually what we're supposed to do. We're gonna not dump all the flour in at once. We're gonna add it in gradually. And if you have that wooden spoon, you're gonna mix it slowly together. So I'm gonna add a little bit at a time. We're gonna mix it. A little bit more. And you're gonna keep mixing it, and it's like gonna look kind of clumpy at first, but that's all right, because over time, we're just gonna keep on mixing, and it's gonna eventually turn into a nice dough that we can roll out and make into pretzels. And we can make them whatever shape we want. And while I'm adding this, I'll share some cool little facts that I didn't know before I looked up this recipe. Pretzels were actually traditionally made during Lent, usually over in Germany. This goes way back, all the way even to the 5th century. They used to make pretzels during Lent because they were pretty easy to make. And in Lent, traditionally, you're not going to be eating a bunch of fancy foods and meats and stuff like that. So pretzels were easy to make. And if you think of the shape of a pretzel, what I saw is that a lot of people think the shape came from when you think of someone who goes to pray or do something, you kind of cross your arms or hold them like this. Pretzel shape, right? So that's where some people think that pretzel shape came from. So now you can, every time you see a pretzel, you can tell a little story about that. I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, I'm adding the rest of my flour. Should be getting a little bit harder to mix, a little more doughy. This is a good arm workout for any parents who haven't had a chance to go to the gym. And you're gonna just start really mixing that together. And what you want is you wanna get a nice dough. You don't want it to be too sticky. You want it to kind of form a ball that doesn't really stick to the sides. And eventually, if you're brave enough, what you're gonna do after you get it together is I'm gonna kind of wipe it off of my wooden spoon, and then I'm gonna start mixing it by hand. Okay, mixing it by hand. Ugh, sticky. This will be fun. And you can tell your friends that you made pretzels. So earlier we chatted about how food is a good metaphor for our relationship with God when we think of God as sustainer, right? And I love using pretzels for this example too, because it's a bunch of ingredients that on their own wouldn't really give you many nutrients, won't sustain you. I think you'd probably have a really bad stomachache if you just ate some flour. But when you give it time to mix together with the yeast and the water and the sugar and the butter, it all starts to kind of come together, and it combines and it releases all of the nutrients that are in the flour that are actually good for our body and give us energy and stuff like that. And sometimes I like to think about that with God. You know, we have all these things that we've been told that we can do. You know, we can pray or go to church or, love our neighbor as ourselves. All these little things that we've been told that we can do, right? All separately, they're not bad things at all. But if we start to kind of do them a little bit more consistently, practice them a little more often, they start to come together, and you start to see how your friends maybe get along a little bit more, trust you more, how you might be a little happier, right? That you're doing some nice things, and you might feel a little closer to God when you practice praying or writing in that prayer journal. They're all little ways that over time come together and help sustain our relationship with God. Because inevitably, there will come a time in your life and in mine, and there has been in my life, where your relationship with God is going to be kind of tough. You might be sad, you might be going through something hard, and you're wondering, where is God? How do I find God? What does this look like? And those little things are really, really going to help you search out where God is in your life, because God's there. Remember, we talked about this with faith. God is there even if we can't see him. Sometimes it takes us a moment to search for God and find God in those spaces. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So I hope you've been mixing. Mine's still a little sticky, so I am going to add a little bit more flour, and feel free to do so yourselves. And you're just going to add a little bit and a little bit until you get a nice firm ball of dough. And then once you get it all firmed up, and you can either put it out on your table or leave it in the bowl, depends on how much space you have. You're going to let it rest for about 10 minutes just so it gets to situate itself. All right? All right. We've made it this far, friends. Okay. After you've let your dough rest, and you'll even see it probably expand for a little 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, it says you can cut into 1/3 cup sizes, but you can also eyeball it. So I have a chunk. This is what my dough looks like, by the way, in the bowl. It's rising up. And I cut a piece off, and you're going to flour a surface, and you're going to plop that on right there, and we're going to get to rolling. But you're also, before you start that, you're going to get I cut it in half, so I did about 4.5 cups of water and a 1/4 cup of baking soda, but the recipe also says you can do a bigger pot, which is 9 cups of water and a 1/2 cup of baking soda. And you're gonna put that on the stove and you're gonna turn it on and you're gonna bring that to a boil while we roll these out. So, trying to think of what shape, but we're gonna roll it out into a little line. And this is the part where you get to be as creative as you want. It doesn't have to be your standard pretzel shape. It can be anything that you want. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna pull mine out a little bit. You can kind of see. Depends on how stiff your dough is. So I'm kind of just like letting it spread out a little bit. But while we're rolling out the dough, I want you to think, what are some things that sustain you? We've already talked about food. Maybe exercise is something that really kind of helps you keep a clear head, and maybe you always feel good after you do some of that. That happens a lot. I know gardening is another thing that I like to do, and that's something that sustains me. And when I say sustain, I don't mean exactly like food where it gives us the nutrients our bodies need, but I mean sustained spiritually. And that's what we're getting at today, is that God sustains us in ways that not much else can. When we're feeling really lonely and like maybe nobody cares, or you're feeling bad about yourself, or maybe you're angry, you feel like abandoned or something like that. It's in those moments when God is with us and sustaining us in those moments. And that's what Lent is about too. We've talked about what Lent is. It mirrors that wilderness where Jesus was being tempted with all of these things. It was so hard. He was probably so lonely. And that's what Lent is for us, right? It's that time where we start sitting with, what are some things that have just really been hard this year and hard for my faith life? You're not alone in any of that. And there's actually I think he's Catholic, but his name is Thomas Merton. He lived a long, long time ago. And he wrote this beautiful prayer that speaks to that. When we're tired and lost or just confused and we don't know if what we're doing or where we're going is the right thing or the right way. And he wrote a prayer to God. And it's a prayer that's so beautiful and speaks to that wilderness time that we all have in our lives when we feel so lonely, and what's going to sustain us. And God does, even when we don't know how. That's the beauty, right? So when we're done making these pretzels, I'm going to read that prayer for you. And I hope that you enjoy it. It's one that I have really loved. How's your rolling going? As you can tell, I'm a little bit cheating. But you're going to roll it on out. You can make it a thick pretzel, a thin pretzel. I'm debating what shape to even do. I don't know. Might try the original shape first off, but now you can tell all your friends that you know how to make pretzels. You can wow them the next time we're able to have friends over. All right, so we're getting about there. I'm gonna roll it out a little bit more. Okay. Okay, and I think what I might do is I might try what they do is, so it's like, gonna bring it over, fold it like that, kind of push it together so it sticks, and I might cheat and let it kind of wiggle out, you know, like those pizza people that throw the pizza in the air just to get it to stretch. I won't throw it, but I'm gonna let gravity help me out here a little bit. And then what I've been told is that you can either literally just flip it on over and press it in so you get that kind of rough heart shape like that, or you can twist it. Get creative. We're sustained in a bunch of different ways, so whatever shape works for you. I'm gonna try look at that. We'll see how this goes. And then we're gonna go on over here and you're gonna plop it into the boiling water for like 15 seconds tops, 20 seconds. It's just enough to kind of get the flour baking and cooking, and it's gonna give it that chewy texture. So you're gonna plop it in there, and you're gonna take a slotted spoon, and after you count to 15 or 20, you're gonna get it out, and be careful because it's boiling. You're gonna get it out with your slotted spoon, get all that water off, and then you're gonna put it on your baking sheet. I have like a baking mat, but you can use parchment paper. If you do use parchment paper, maybe put a little bit of, if you have cooking spray so it doesn't stick that much, but you're gonna put it on here and you're gonna pop it in the oven. All right, I'm gonna dump mine in and put it on the tray. We'll see how this turns out. We're back, friends. This is what mine look like after I put them in my boiling baking soda water for about 22 seconds. So I sprinkled a little bit of black salt on them. You can use any salt. I just want it to be weird. And I'm gonna pop them in my oven, which is at 400 degrees now. And we are gonna leave them in for 12 to 15 minutes. So if you have a light on, maybe turn the light on, and you can keep an eye. You want them to be like golden brown. So we will see each other on the other side of 12 to 15 minutes. Okay, friends, the 15 minutes is up. I just took them out of the oven, and look what they look like. I think they look pretty good, do you? I hope yours turn out just as good. Once they cool down, I'm gonna give them the old taste test just to see. I hope that you guys have enjoyed making pretzels with me. I hope you've learned something new. I hope that you've been able to ask yourself something new about your faith. What sustains you? How does God sustain you? What do you do when you're lonely to look to be sustained? What makes you keep going? As we walk this Lenten journey together, the one that kind of mirrors that wilderness and gives us space in our year as Christians to ask us how we deal with hard things and where we might look for God in moments that are really hard. I hope that you are reminded that God is with you always, always sustaining you, giving you that little bit of hope, that little bit of joy, that little bit of courage, just to keep going. God is with us, pushing us to keep going just one day at a time, even when we don't know the next right step. We just trust in God. We trust in ourselves that we'll do the right thing. And if we don't, we'll keep going, because guess what? God loves us no matter what. And that's the best part. I'm going to share that poem/prayer with you guys as our closing piece. This is called A Prayer for Guidance by Thomas Merton. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not sense the road ahead of me, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will always lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadows. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my struggles alone. Amen. Be well, everyone. I'll see you next week. Let's look for moments and things that keep us going, that give us strength and sustain us, especially in our faith. See you next week.